Yes, and nice to have you on the program. We're looking at some of the developments in the news, and we'll particularly start with the role the media has to play following the editors' conference that held in Yenogwa, where the president has talked about his economic reforms taking Nigeria on track. The media did ask that some interventions be made to help with the cost of running business at this time in the nation. Now, it's important that this intervention many are looking at does not somewhat impede factual reportage of events in the country. How would you assess this development?
Well, I agree partially with the president, but put it back to him as the manager of all managers. Every person acting in this government acts on his behalf. That is to say, his appointees. So if there is under-reportage or wrong reportage or inadequate reportage of what he is doing and the reforms he is carrying out, it is because the handlers of and managers of information are underperforming, and he knows what to do. But essentially, the reforms, it is true, are fundamental and definitely very, very painful. But they are necessary at a time like this. It is impossible for us to inherit what we inherited as a country and expect that certain things shouldn't be done. What everybody must salute about this president is his courage not to mind about the consequences, the political consequences of his economic actions. Because in other times in this country, political expediency have often orchestrated all decisions that were taken. The foundation of all decisions was about the next election. But this president has, for the history, taken decisions that can cost him his election, and he doesn't care about that. Therefore, I think he should be commended that he's thinking about the next generation of Nigerians and where Nigeria should be, rather than about his personal survival in politics. To that extent, his economic reforms should be commended, should be supported, and ought to receive greater details in terms of reporting to the populace and the citizens who are bearing the brunt of those decisions. So the reforms are fundamental, they are large, they are far-reaching, they are certainly going to be curative, but as it is now, the pain is simply not bearable, and Nigerians should expect more pains. They should not expect that there will be palliatives can solve the problem. They are just a stopgap. They are temporal. But the fundamental thing to note is that these reforms are going to be more far-reaching and more lasting and more sustainable.
Well, Honorable Cletus, in as much as we are talking about reforms and policies that will sort of benefit the Nigerian populace and make the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu seem more human to Nigerian citizens, let's also talk about things like media censorship or media gagging. In the just concluded event, calls were made for the federal government to sort of show support to the media via incentives or whatever it is. These support systems were not clearly spelled out. But in a situation like this, how do we create this clear-cut line between supporting the media in their reportage and ensuring that media businesses in the country thrive, and actually doing that in such a way that the media is gagged not to report what might be considered as a shortfall or inadequacy in the government?
Now, let me say this. Like the media, like the manufacturers, like the workers, like the private sector, like the informal sector, all need support at this point because the economy is affecting all sectors. But why is the media seen at the foot of the rim? Poor or bad reportage, bad media, and poor media, or the absence of media, or the inadequacies of the media, the challenges of the media can affect society, can affect the other three arms of government. So to that extent, the media, you may be saying, should receive greater attention and greater remediation, greater intervention from government. To that extent, yes. But to make it look as if the government, in any case, if you are running a private media outfit, all the government can do is to create the environment for you. In any case, at an age of ICT, in the age of AI, artificial intelligence, you are not expecting that the president should be insensitive to the media's challenges, because it is only in his interest that the media should be supported in order for him to be also supported. Because whatever he's doing needs to be carried by the mainstream media, the private media especially, and also the social media. But you cannot also accuse this government of gagging the media or censoring the media. The media is facing challenges like any other sector in our country today, as it is happening elsewhere. So I believe, and I want to accept the fact that the media should be more supported, because it is needed as an arm of government in order to make government move and be smooth, and for government to ride on, and for citizens to connect with the government, and government to connect with its people. You need the media. So to that extent, the media should be supported. I agree completely with that. But the media should also identify the areas of that support. It's not just a blanket support in one specific areas, and this should be made and put on the table more as an appeal, because the synergy between the media and the government and the citizens is so fundamental, is so important, and is almost a necessity if government and society must move together and be seen to be cooperating and interfacing for us to have a synergy in terms of moving government and people together to the destination that we would like to move to as a country. So the media needs that support, but they should identify that area of support and request for it directly, rather than just give a blanket, give us support. What area of support do you need? And in that way, the necessary instruments of government and the apparatus of government and departments of government, like the Ministry of Information, the National Orientation Agency, the banks, and other such facilities. Because even the areas of advertising by citizens, if the manufacturers are not having a market, how do they go to do advertisement, which is the mainstay of most of the media houses? If there are no activities in the social realm, how do the media operate and how do they survive? So all these are interchangeable and interrelated. And so the government must look at the area, but the media must help out by being specific about what area they need to operate and the area of assistance that they need from government.
Now let's move to some other critical issues in the news. We'll talk about the national grid shortly, but let's talk about the issues with new terrorist groups in the northwest, known as the Lukurawas. This is one of the challenging developments that has forced Nigerians to ask, how actively are we really suppressing acts of terrorism in the northern part of the country? What do you make of this development in Kebbi and Sokoto?
The resurgence of insurgency with the emergence of this new terrorist group is very worrisome. And I think it is in the Nigerian best interest to take off the way the president took off by aggregating and calling for collaboration with neighboring countries. Because most of what you are seeing, Boko Haram and others were exacerbated and attenuated by the event here. Now again, you are having within the West African sub-region events in Mali, Niger, and Chad, especially after the coup in Chad, bringing out this kind of reaction and this kind of insurgency. It has to be met. And to do that, with modern technology, you must need power. So the constant collapse, the regular and intermittent collapse of the national grid is worrisome. That was the fix. Because even for you to use modern technology, it must be powered by light. And you can't be having power failure and national grid collapse, and every 2 days, every 72 hours, you are hearing of collapse. What is happening in the Northeast, that is also becoming an issue. So for me, the issue of the new group that is coming out, I am sure that their cells have not yet been sufficiently spread, because what happened is starting point. So it must be nipped in the bud. Coming at a time when we just lost the chief of army staff and the new one, this is the new chief of army staff and his the chief of defense staff and indeed the security agencies and apparatus must take its focus to that area. Because being in the desert, Sahel Savannah, we shouldn't be having much crisis. One, the desert shouldn't be major crisis in an age of drones, in an age of technology. We shouldn't be, if we need to get help and get the equipment, we have the money, and I think we have also the men. Our military is one of the best in the world. And I think that if they are properly funded and properly equipped, these two can be. After all, from Boko Haram, we're not dealing with banditry. Now that this one is still just coming out, I think they can nip it in the bud, and we need to put up our ante and get our military and the security apparatus in this country. The NSA and others should put on their thinking caps and move into Kebbi and Sokoto, cage them there, first of all, ensure that there is no spread. Because like a cancer, if it spreads up to other states in the northwest, then you are sure that it will start descending, coming down to the north central where you have the capital, and then of course the other parts of the country. I think this can be new.
Honorable Obun, if you remember, some couple of months ago, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had asked all the service chiefs to move to the northwest. I think it was Sokoto in particular, or Katsina. It was Sokoto, yes. And he had also asked the Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawalle, to move alongside them and ensure that they quell the banditry and kidnapping and all the insurgency in the northwestern part of the country. A couple of months down the line, these activities continue to happen in this region. And yet again, we have a new group springing up, calling themselves the Lakurawas, who have imposed a 150 million naira levy on dwellers of communities in Sokoto, that they have to pay these levies for them to be able to live in the communities, for them to be able to farm in the communities. Don't you think that perhaps some sort of action needs to be taken in terms of who our service chiefs are and what Bello Matawalle is doing as Minister of State for Defense, and what the Minister of Defense himself, Mohammed Idris, is doing in ensuring that they quell insurgency and banditry? Are they doing enough in the country?
Doing enough is a measure of the level of peace you enjoy. As long as this crisis came, you cannot be talking about doing well. So far, if you remember, when Matawalle relocated to Sokoto, you remember his governor was trying to distract him with some domestic crisis. But he was able to focus on that. This is, of course, you should know that terrorism all over the world, is a daily occurrence. It is not a stop-gap thing. It's not something that happens once and then disappears. It is cancerous. It spreads things up from time to time. And of course, we should know that this intermittent resurgency of an introduction of new groups is only the last kicks of a dying group. So the regrouping that is going on now is something to worry about, for which the defense and the security agencies must come out with a strategy, not to stem this one, but to wipe it out thoroughly. You can see already that in the northeast, it has been sufficiently tamed and reduced to some minimum level. You cannot say it has been eradicated, but we are no longer hearing the carrying of flags and the capturing of areas. This one now is a new one, and I'm very sure that our military and our security, and especially the president, will now pay attention to it, name very well the consequences it will have on our polity and on our people in those areas. For instance, talking about the imposition, what that means is that it's a signal that there will be food crisis, because farmers can no longer go to farm. It also means that even what they are planting, they cannot even harvest. So that is already minus 10-20% of the food that comes from the northwest, especially from those two states. So you are going to get a situation in which the president must have to give marching orders and move the war theater back there, move family, and take out this particular group that is just emerging. Because if you know the way and modus operandi of this type of groups, they are never at any time coming as it's an asymmetrical warfare. They are not coming together as already a formed group. They are only trying to form cells. Coming from outside, what that means is you must cut them off from the borders and ensure that the security in that area is tightened up, and then you take on those who have entered the country, while cooperating with those countries from where they are migrating from, so that the contagious effect of what is happening in neighboring countries cannot exacerbate our own already tense situation within the national territory of Nigeria. I am confident that our security forces are going to handle that, and I will be happy to see them come out of this very fast.
Well, kudos to the Nigerian military, Honorable Obun. They have actually released names and pictures of about 9 kidnapping and banditry kingpins in the Northwest that are being wanted, and they are also part of the Lakurawas, the new terror group. However, let's take a look at it from three different angles. When Boko Haram started in Borno in 2009, they started off almost the same way the Lakurawas started off, with a name. They had a name, they had a motive, and it was as if it was just a small group that could be quelled in just a few days or in even one day. But now they have spread, and more than 15 years down the line, we are still grappling with the issue of Boko Haram in certain parts of Borno State. In the case of Bello Turji came on board, and his group didn't have a name. We only knew Bello Turji and his gang of bandits. But with the coming of the Lakurawas, they seem to be more organized. They seem to have more backing of forces that we cannot see and we do not know. Don't you think this calls for some sort of state of emergency in places like Sokoto or Niger, or Kebbi, I beg your pardon, or even the entire Northwest? Are we playing with fire, and should we really be playing with fire in this sense?
I am not sure that it is correct to read the present situation as playing with fire, because if the president can order the Minister of State to move into the Northwest, to stay in Sokoto in order to face this, and as he was about getting it done, this group emerges, it does not in any way show that we are playing with fire. Remember, even Buhari, when he first came in, he moved the war theater. He moved the theater to Maiduguri. And I'm sure this is what this president has done by asking the Minister of State to move them. Maybe, and I know this will happen very soon and very shortly, because it needs swift reaction immediately to stem this. It is just to increase the forces on ground in that place and bring in more equipment and more men to take on. Because, like I said, the area is not as large, and the war is not a conventional war. So for that reason, you are going to have it be prolonged and protected. But you should also agree with me that Boko Haram in the Northeast, for example, has been sufficiently reduced to its barest minimum. We cannot say that it is what we saw in 2015 or 2017. That is not the same Boko Haram we are seeing in the Northwest. And I think in the Northwest now, as we see it, I am very certain that declaring a state of emergency is not by pronunciation, it's not by proclamation. It is by the actions taken, and that action has been taken when the Minister of State was asked to relocate and stay permanently in the Northwest, coming as a former governor from that area and being a Minister of State for Defense. He has the knowledge and the geography and the topography of the area, and therefore with the aid of the military, I am certain, like I said, that we are playing with no fire. On the contrary, the government and the president of Nigeria, commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Federal Republic, is doing what should be done. All we need now is to add more men and encourage him with information, especially from the natives, and then a synergy between the armed forces, Air Force, Navy, and of course, the different units within the army must have to synergize in a manner that aerial battles should be supported by ground battles, and ground battles should be supported by aerial battles. Information and intelligence must be exchanged between the DSS and the military intelligence and defense intelligence. We have all this coming together, should be able to make that this move, and Turji and his gang and those who are joining him now to be taken out in no time, because I am very certain, like I said, that in the Sahel Savannah, we shouldn't have difficulties taking those people out in no time. And I think our military is equal to the task.
Now, Honorable Obun, in closing, we have just a little less than 10 minutes to wrap up on this conversation. Let's talk about the national power grid. If you would recall, last month, to be specific, on the 19th of September, here in Abuja, in Gwagwalada, the Minister of Power, Chief Adebara Delabu, told Nigerians that a $56 million SCADA monitoring system had been put in place to monitor the performance of the national power grid. But quite sadly, just a few weeks down the line, the power grid has collapsed more than 3 times in the space of 1 week. The challenge now is Nigerians are demanding accountability in the expenditure of governments to provide Nigerians with adequate social amenities, especially when it comes to electricity. Care to make any comments on this $56 million SCADA monitoring system and what you think of the epileptic nature of our power grid?
I think people get away with too much in this country. And that is why when the cabinet reshuffle took place, a measure of the performance of any government official or parastatal should not be by patronage. It should be by performance. If power grid is an issue elsewhere in other civilized places or more tame places, people like that should resign. They shouldn't wait to be fired. Should Nigerians go on strike before a minister who is not performing should be taken out? Why should we still be discussing light from 1980 to 2024? From the 19th century to the 20th century to the 21st century, we are still discussing light in Nigeria 60 years on. And our neighbors here, we have 3 or 4 forms of getting power in Nigeria. Solar is the latest discovery. Why are we not doing this? What is happening to gas? What's happening to wind? In northern Nigeria, out of 12 months in a year, 8 months of the year is sunny. Why can't we tap from that? Why is that becoming a problem? I think that some people are deliberately sabotaging our quest for power attainment in Nigeria, stable light in Nigeria, stable power supply in Nigeria, and any person who cannot perform should not be. And I have made the point elsewhere that anybody who, no government official, especially in the Ministry of Power, should be allowed to get generator. So they'll go through what Nigerians are going through. Because if that happens, they will fix this right. And that should be a qualification for you to even be a minister. How many generators do you have in your house? If you are using generator, you are not qualified to be a minister of power. If your children are schooling outside Nigeria, you are not qualified to be a minister of education. Those are the criteria we should use, and Nigerians should be able to ask accountability about how much we have spent and not getting results. It's about your conduct. It's about your conduct. How do you behave? How do you live your life? Do you live a life as one of us, or you live like a refugee, a migrant, who will soon go back to where he's coming from, to his comfort zone, or lives in a cocoon where he doesn't feel the impact of what others are feeling across the country? That is what we should be using to appoint people into offices. Look at what Zulum is doing in Borno State. Look at what Ashwadu did in Lagos and tried to bring the independent power plant that Obasanjo stopped. If they had put that in Lagos today, we won't be discussing what we're doing. But look at what Professor Batnab has done with Abia State. We are now getting their steady life without talking to anybody. Now that they have decentralized power, what are the states still waiting for and doing national grid? What are they doing with national grid at this stage of our existence? Now, once one line is gone, the whole country is thrown into darkness in the name of national grid. Where do you find that?
Honorable Cletus, the Minister of Power has said that the collapse in the power grid can be attributed to 2 things. One, vandalism, which begs to, I honestly don't think vandalism is the cause for that, but I want you to react to it. And then secondly, he said that lack of maintenance of the power grid is also the cause of these constant collapses. Do you think that vandalism of any sort is the cause of this continuous problem that Nigerians grapple with every now and then?
I do. In the first place, to attribute it to those 2 is to admit inefficiency. It's to admit lack of performance by the minister. He's admitting that he's incompetent. What do you mean by vandalism? It means there is no monitoring. Is that not what happened to the rail line from Abuja to Kaduna? Now that the security apparatus have been put in place, are you still hearing the vandalism and the kidnapping of people inside trains? You don't get that anymore because somebody will start up and ensure that didn't happen again. Because what should have been put there in the first place was not put. Who supervised it? People should be punished for that. Elsewhere, you go to life imprisonment for endangering the lives of people, for carrying out a contact or carrying out an activity that didn't put the necessary security apparatus in place. So also it is with national grid. How can you talk about vandalism? And then you are telling us that you have spent 56 million naira to monitor to put security on it, and you are still talking about vandalism. So where did the 56 million go? So that is an admission of incompetence. So to that extent, like I said, the honorable thing to do is to say, I cannot perform this duty, and you get out of the place and let somebody who is serious get to perform for Nigerians. So I am not going to accept the fact that I attributed to 2 things, and that is vandalism and lack of maintenance. Who should maintain the place? Who should maintain the place? Is there no budget for maintenance? So what is the budget doing? Are there no releases? We should look at all this. What is the oversight function of the National Assembly? Have they found out that the people who were given money to maintain and they couldn't maintain? We're in this country where somebody collected $300 million to fix roads and fix no road, and he walked away with the money. And when somebody asked him, he was threatened with death, assassination, for asking the question where the $300 million went to for eastern roads in eastern Nigeria. You remember that? You should remember that in 2003.
Yes, I certainly do.
So that is what the minister is saying. So how can you come brazenly and tell us that you are incompetent and that you cannot perform your duty by maintaining what you are supposed to maintain? Because all this should be put in the budget.
I've seen a lot of tweets online, Honorable Obun. I've seen a lot of tweets online where people have sort of called for the minister's sack, citing that when the cabinet reshuffle of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu happened recently, where some ministers had to be let go, others were moved to different ministries, and some new ministers were instated into the cabinet system, that the Minister of Power should have also been ushered out of the ministerial role, considering the fact that he has not been able to deliver, firstly, stable electricity to Nigerians, and secondly, the national grid continues to collapse as if it's a dilapidated structure. Do you share the same opinion?
I have made that point. He has said he should resign. If they are not sacking him, he should resign and say, "I cannot fix this." Is it compulsory? Is it mandatory for him to remain in office, having seen that he made a promise only how many days ago, and then now we are having this collapse and saying that he has spent this amount and this is happening? Must he stay there, and must the president continue to patronize such people? Shouldn't they be punished? Is there no punishment? Is it not bad enough that we cannot punish them and still keep them in office? We keep seeing this type of patronage and patronizing attitude. I see some people are indispensable. What is Badinaji doing in Abia State that you cannot bring him back here to say, come and assist us, fix the national grid, and put him on a task force and give him matching orders and declare a state of emergency on power? And bring people like that. There are several of them here. Some are outside the country. Bring them in here and put them on that place within the next 6 months and see whether the power will not stabilize. And make them also help other states to generate their own power as a deal. And there's a law now that backs that up. Why are we not doing that? Putting a national task force to say assist the states to get their powers. In Cross River State, we have more than 4 waterfalls. So we can do hydroelectricity in Cross River and even feed places like Benue State, feed places like Abia State. Ebonyi State, and other states surrounding us, including even Enugu State. We can do that. Why can't we do that? Why won't you ask him to also extend that to the eastern region, what they are doing in Aba, what they are doing in Abia State? Why won't you do that? Is it too much? We have the men, we have the resources, and we cannot put it. You have $56 million, and you are telling us that you couldn't fix it, and then the place is collapsing, and the man is sitting there and giving excuses. Are we here to take excuses? You saw there was a problem, and that is why they did that. So why are you disturbing public peace by occupying a position you are grossly incompetent to handle? Is it a must? Must the president continue to punish Nigerians with such people as if we don't have people to replace them? If it's a family matter, let him go and pick people from his state. I know that there are more competent people even from the state where the minister comes from. So I don't think that we should tolerate this and endure and continue to endure it from our own government. It is completely wrong, it is totally unacceptable, and we have no reason not to have steady power supply in Nigeria. We have no reason under the sun, because all the modes and forms of power generation we already have. So I don't think we owe it to anybody to keeping those people on. It is completely and totally wrong.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for your vehement opinions on this subject. But in closing, one last question before we call it a wrap. Whilst the Gencos have their issues, the Discos have also shocked Nigerians, hiking the price of meters by 28% in this same month when we're complaining about a collapse in the national grid. The president had talked about his mass metering project. Does it worry you that despite this intervention on the one hand, there seems to be a slow rollout of this initiative?
Let me say this. The pain is not about the absence or the price. The pain is that you are paying for darkness rather than paying for light. That is the pain Nigerians are we not paying for fuel today? Are we not paying our transport and going about our normal businesses? Once the supply of fuel, Nigerians are ready to pay. They may grumble over a period because in comparative terms, we have cheaper fuel here. But I'm asking you, why should we pay for darkness? and the meter process, what does it take to meter every house in Nigeria? What does it take? Put this thing back to local government and push it to them to handle. We must not be handling things from Abuja. Push this thing to local government. Because everybody is living in a local government. In Abuja, we are living in council areas. In Lagos, we are living in local government. Put this into the 774 local governments and give them matching orders within a period to install those things in every household. And you put it in phases from the headquarters to the satellite towns to the major towns, and then you move on to the interiors. If you do that, clearly, Nigeria will generate its own power, and the Gencos and the Discos will have no business with us, because we definitely will have that, because already we have discovered that they have shortchanged us. The agreement that brought them on board was brought in fraudulently, and those fraudulent things are now what we are paying for. I'm paying for darkness more than we can pay for light. If there is light, Nigerians are ready to pay, and there will be less complaints. I think that we need to have Gencos and Discos eliminated gradually, but for now, because of the nature of the agreement that they came with, it is difficult to take them out. But as long as they stay, they must be regulated, and the laws can be amended in such a manner that the common man will have a better say and good quality for his money.
Well, thank you very much, Honorable Cletus Obun, for taking our time to grace the show. We appreciate you.
Thank you, and may Nigeria be blessed.
Well, big thank you to yourself, Chijoke, as well.